Hello and welcome to the Backlot 605 box office. I am your host, Brian Mensing, and joining me as always is my co-host, Derrick Veurink. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing great. You?
Not too bad. It's been an interesting week, I want to say, for the sake of the box office here. Some of the ones that you and I talked about for that came out this week that uh, were kind of the unusual
Y-
ones. I think we're
Yeah,
going to talk about more than I actually wasn't kind of expecting about this week.
yeah. I mean, we knew they were going to come out, but we didn't know how good they were going to do. And
hmm
I think, yeah, as we get into it, I think it'll make pretty good sense why they did what they did. So,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Now, did anybody beat the Batman?
hmm,
Yeah, no. Um, Batman comes in at number one, $36.8 million, taking only a 45% hit from week two to week three. Um, I mean, in all honesty, I'd say that's actually a pretty good number, to be honest. Giving us a total of just a smidge over the 300 million mark. Yeah, this is kind of, I think, in lines with what I expected. Maybe even maybe a little bit of a better reservation than I think than like from the week one to week two.
yeah, I think part of this is because the Batman has had no serious competition since it came out.
Mm-hmm.
With these past 2 weeks, I think that's what it still remained as the main movie to see by default because
Yeah.
there was, at least in theaters, there was no significant alternative option. So that's just how it plays out. And again, I think we're going to see something very similar to No Way Home, where the Batman is just going to linger around for weeks on end.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly significantly through April at this point, which is fine. Again, it's got to make
Yeah.
that money. It's got to justify its existence. So yeah,
Oh, for sure. Oh, yeah. And I just see that, and we've mentioned this here before that Warner Brothers has acknowledged that the Batman will show up on HBO Max on the 19th of April. And I still think, and you probably would agree with me though, that this will still be in the theaters while it's streaming on HBO Max, and I still think it's still going to be pulling in a quite a bit of a bank enough to keep us in the top five. Probably at least until the end of April.
yeah. I mean, obviously, we talked about this a little bit last week. How going forward, Warner Brothers is going to have a 45-day window before movies going to HBO Max,
hmm
and people don't know. Not everybody knows that yet. But certainly just the name cachet of, hey, there's a Batman movie, we'll go see it, even if it takes 4, 5, 6 weeks. Some people will wait to get around to it, but they'll go show up for it anyway
hmm
because it's Batman. It's durable. So
It very much so. And a very good Batman. I know that we will say that I don't know how many times, but a very good Batman.
yes,
Um, and on that note, we will look at how is it comparing to the rest of the Batman franchises, and as you and I both kind of alluded to, um, not expecting it actually surpasses the 1989 Batman, and on its verge of beating Batman v Superman, which again, um, looking at just the overall and how it's been doing so far, it's going with right where I expected, where it's like it's easily going to surpass number three.
yeah, it's probably going to land in the 400 million range when all
hmm
is said and done, which again is very respectable. Again, that's only you know subsistent to the Dark Knight and the Dark Knight Rises, which again is very
Right.
good, has a lot of promise. And again, that's just for a first movie. At the point
Right.
where they get to I can only presume that they're going to say, here comes the Batman 2, and this time we're going to have the Joker in it. And that's just going to make all the money in the world at that point. So it's only going to go up from there.
Yeah. You say that in regards to the Joker really being it. I'm okay with him. I still think I'm okay with him being a little bit of a background figure, at least for a little bit. He doesn't necessarily need to be in number two. Give some of those other villains a little bit of a chance. So I guess we'll see
Yeah,
though.
I'm just kind of playing it as the benefit of the doubt of you know they had to
Alluded.
put the teaser in this new movie, so we'll
hmm
see.
Absolutely. All right. So going into our number two, Jujutsu Kaisen Zero takes number two, $17.7 million. This is one of those where did this come from thing for the anime, and you and I both said in regards to the anime audience, this coming in at number two, I'm not surprised. If we didn't have the Batman that going on right now, this obviously and clearly would have been a number one movie.
Yeah, obviously, I will freely admit I'm not an anime guy, so I
Hmm.
don't know these franchises very intricately. But what I
Right.
can say is, you know, the folks at Funimation slash Crunchyroll who do all these theatrical releases for most of the anime movies that pop up on these top five lists, they've
Hmm.
really kind of boiled it down to a science in terms of how to make these anime openings into events.
Yeah.
I was at the theater Thursday night to watch a movie that we'll talk about a little bit later here in the show. And I had to pop into the auditoriums quickly to see the audience turnout for Jujutsu Kaisen Zero. And, they were pretty full, I would say, including even the XD auditorium, which got to show this movie for one night only on Thursday.
Yeah.
And then I came back to the theater on Friday afternoon to see The Outfit. And again, lots of young folks out there in the lobby, wearing the Jujutsu Kaisen shirts. It's these things are getting to be big deals. Now, granted, this wasn't as big as when Demon Slayer the movie opened last
Hmm.
April, because that opened to like 23 million or thereabouts. You might recall that was the weekend where it was neck and neck with Mortal Kombat,
Yeah.
because that was the same weekend it opened. And then the weekend after that, Mortal Kombat had its huge 60+% drop because of the HBO Max deal, but
Yep.
Demon Slayer ended up topping it and was at number one. So that's kind of like the high point for recent anime openings.
Hmm.
But I still think they picked a pretty good weekend because, again, it was, there was other stuff coming out in theaters, but nothing that was, going to prove a huge threat to it. And I think
Yeah.
they're very careful in choosing the weekends that are going to give it the most impact at this point.
Oh, definitely. And I would say even say as like you, I'm not as well versed in the subgenre of anime. But like when you make mention of like say Demon Slayer, for example, I don't watch anime. I'm not as familiar with certain animes, whatever, but I am familiar with Demon Slayer.
Hmm.
So to that respect, I'm like, oh, the way that one rolled out when come that time and whatnot. To me, those numbers made sense. Coming into this one here, I don't know this franchise worth anything, and just knowing that for that respect and knowing what kind of audience that it has, that clearly, like you said, these guys know what they're doing, how to position, when to release movies, everything like that. Kind of to the point where it's like maybe the people over at Funimation and Crunchyroll need to have like powwows with other studios
Sure.
so they could teach them this is how you release a movie so you can make some money off of it.
Well, I think part of why they benefit is because, again, they're choosing kind of the weekends where the studios have kind of ignored or decided we're not going to
True.
play that. There's kind of that thought here of, I think part of why this weekend was isolated originally was because there were some Omicron concerns, because there were supposed to be some bigger movies coming out this weekend originally, like the Jason Statham Guy Ritchie movie Operation Fortune was supposed to
Oh
come
yeah.
out this weekend. I think Downton Abbey sequel was supposed to come out this weekend at 1.2, but they just vacated for some reason. And so, again, they're finding the weekends that the studios are ignoring, which I think works to their benefit.
Oh, for sure. All right, coming in at number three, Uncharted, 8 million, taking a 14% drop from week four to week five, um, pushing itself just over the $125 million mark. Uh, Again, as we've said from week to week, for the Tom Holland franchise and whatnot, because you and I both know Sony's going to turn this into a franchise.
Yep.
This is doing pretty solid again. Only $8 million, but I'd say again, just because it's not the Batman, I think it's still holding pretty strong from week to week while it's competing against the Batman.
Yeah, I think, even though everybody's watching the Batman, theaters have to show other stuff besides the
Hmm.
Batman. And so, because there hasn't been that much product, they just have to keep holding over these movies that have been playing for a month. And
Yeah.
I think that's a big part of why Uncharted is benefiting, is having these incredibly small drops because of it. I think it's probably going to leg out to close to 150 million at this point, which
Uh,
again is a pretty good success and sets the foundation for certainly a sequel, if not a full blown multi installment franchise.
yeah. Oh yeah, and I think in comparing this to like say the Batman for counter programming, if you will, this is that movie that somebody's going to go to because they want that popcorn action flick kind of thing. Maybe they're not is too much into superhero movies, so it's a good thing to have. Like it's a high profile type of film and whatnot, and they'll be like, I would rather go see Uncharted than go see the Batman. So I think I agree. I think that's one of the reasons that's helping keeping that longevity over here these last few weeks.
The other thing I have to wonder too is, when you get to grosses as high as this, you have to wonder like, certainly there's going to be a subset of the audience that is familiar with the games, that has played
Hmm.
the games. I think it's getting to that point where you're really crossing over to a general audience who don't really see it as a video game spinoff, but more of just like a
Action
Tom
movie.
Holland, Mark Wahlberg action adventure movie, which
Yeah,
probably helps it too.
I would definitely get behind that for sure. I would say that's probably a lot of it because those people that are familiar with the franchise in terms of the games and stuff like that probably already went a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
The only ones that are going now are either the rewatchers or the ones that were like, I'm just gonna wait a little bit before I go see the movie. But otherwise, I think you're right. I think it's everybody it's that subset of people going, I just want an action movie and not
Or
even realize that Uncharted is even a video game.
yeah, or even I just want a Tom Holland movie where he's not Spider-Man. He's
Fact.
switching over into that era of stardom for him. So
Yes, that's not chaos walking. All right. Coming in at number 4, X, which is one of the ones we did talk about that was going to be coming out this week. Coming in at number 4 with $4.41 million. You had an opportunity to go see this. I did see your quick little blurb about the movie, and it makes me even more excited to want to go see this. So,
yeah.
uh,
So as of this recording, I've seen it twice now.
oh my,
And I find it to be quite a blast. It's definitely, some folks have kind of informally termed it as, excuse me, as the Texas Chainsaw Massacre meets Boogie Nights, and I can see that.
hmm
It certainly has elements, reminiscent of both of those movies because it is about a group of young folks making a porno in a backwater farmhouse area and getting knocked off one by one.
hmm
It's a lot of fun, especially once the kills start happening. Um, I was I was kind of hoping that it would do a little bit better at the box office because, again,
hmm
this is an A24 horror movie. So traditionally, they would tend to like add some hype to these movies. And I find it kind of interesting because when I went to rewatch this movie on Saturday night, I was talking with some folks that work at the theater where I saw it at, and they were saying, "You'll have to tell us how this movie is because we hadn't really heard about this movie until it
right.
showed up here." And I know there's been some other weird effects too. I know, for example, the trailer they put out for this movie was only a red band trailer, so they weren't able to actually like promote this movie on like any PG-13 movies, like say the Batman. But they probably wouldn't have shown this trailer in front of the Batman anyway. I'm sure.
Yeah.
Um, it seems like a little bit of a lost opportunity for me. I think it's probably one that'll its reputation will probably grow as it heads to digital and home video. I did put
hmm
the note here that based on my research, it looks like it's going to have a 3 week window. So on April 7th, it'll hit premium VOD, where again, due to the subject matter and the fandoms inherent in the movie, it'll probably surge up then. But until then, it's a pretty fun movie to see in theaters. So there you go.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see this one here. Yeah, I know. Up until you brought it up last week, I had never heard of it, and you know, A24 isn't known for the extravagant marketing. I think that compared to they're more of to the creative marketing more than the extravagant like we get out of like the big name studios.
Yeah,
But
they're more online driven, that's for sure.
yeah, but to the point where like this was like it was crickets up until, and I do find that really really fascinating because I mean, even when we got Lamb, for example, I at least knew of it. I didn't know what it was or what was going on or anything like that, but I at least knew of it. In this one here, it's just been kind of like, I mean, and I mean, Ty West, I mean, he clearly has, yeah, that niche that he's been working through right now, and, like, it baffles me, and I agree. I kind of was hoping that this would do better than just $4.5 million, just because it has all the workings of something great.
Yeah, and it also has some names in the cast. I mean, not huge names, but it's got Brittany Snow. It's got Jenna Ortega, who seems to be in every horror movie because she was in the new Scream, and she's in
Mhm.
Studio 666. So this is her third horror movie of the year already.
Yeah.
Kid Cudi is in it, Mia Goth. So there's some decent names, some interesting names in it too. But yeah, I mean, it might find its audience in the next week or two in theaters. But beyond that, home video is probably where it's gonna,
Where it's gonna explode.
surge up at this point, and then people are gonna wonder like, where did this movie come from? And
Mhm.
yeah, it's
Yeah.
just what happens.
Definitely. Yeah, I'm looking at this going, I'm hoping that there's just at least enough of a boot between this week and next week that we at least get to talk about it one more week.
Yeah, I
So
mean, the other thing to keep in mind here is that there is a prequel for this movie that's
that's
already
right.
been filmed. The teaser trailer actually is shown after the end credits of X, so I'll be curious if that reputation can grow on home video,
Hmm.
in digital and streaming and all that stuff. That maybe that adds an effect to that movie. We'll see. So
Good to know. I'm really curious. Yeah, I'm really curious about Pearl, so we'll see how that goes. All right. And then number 5, Dog, coming in at $4.1 million, only taking a 21% drop from week 4 to week 5, pushing itself over that $50 million mark. What I find fascinating about the fact that we've got Dog here is what we got coming up here soon.
yep,
That again, I actually even brought this movie up here over the course of the weekend about, it's like, hey, this for me, this is literally quote unquote the underdog of the beginning of the year, just because it's one of those movies that I feel that, like that core audience would have gone to, and it just would have fluttered off into the distance because I mean, from the outside perspective, it just seems like, oh, it's a guy and his dog. Okay,
yep.
have a couple weeks or whatever. But this one has been holding pretty strong, and I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think a big part of it, as I've said before, is the guy in this guy in the dog situation is Channing Tatum, who
Hmm.
again has been absent, so I think there's been a lot of impetus for that, and there's been a lot of decent word of mouth on it too. When I went to see X for the second time, there were a couple of like grandmother aged ladies sitting to my left, and they were talking about the movie. And it was, so I'm like, yeah, it was solid. It was a little bit darker than I was expecting, but it's still good because the dog doesn't die. Um, so yeah,
You have a winner of a movie when you're at the end of it. You're like, yep, the dog didn't die.
yes, which goes a long way because to this day there are people I know who have not seen the first John Wick movie because the dog dies. I think they might have seen this. I think I even know some people who have seen the sequels, but not the first one because the dog doesn't die in the sequels. It's
And
weird. I know.
I was just like, that's just that part of the movie where you just cover your eyes. You'd be like, okay, we're past the dog. Okay, let's watch all the cool action. Uh, but
and and to be fair, if you got upset by a dog being killed, you'd probably murder 1,000 people too. So
this is true. I
yeah,
mean, he was a really cute dog. We
he
we won't
was.
argue that.
He was.
Sometimes you can't argue a good, great dog movie. Like Dog.
Yes.
All right. So coming in, excuse me, our top 5, we have The Batman, unsurprising, $36.8 million. Number 2, Jujutsu Kaisen Zero, $17.7 million for number 2. Number 3, we have Uncharted with $8 million. Number 4 is X with $4.41 million. And then Dog comes in at number 5 at $4.1 million. I don't know. I keep looking at X and I keep thinking like if it would have just been a smidge more, I just want to see if at number 4 with 4.44, but maybe that's just
Yeah.
a number thing.
Yeah, one thing I do want to point out here real quick is you'll
Yeah.
notice that uh, a movie is finally missing from this top five, which is
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man: No Way Home,
And you
which
had to
left
talk
the
about it.
which finally left here in week 14. So obviously we'll say goodbye to it, but we did want to pay its reverence because again, we talked about it for 3 full months on end. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I just wanted to acknowledge that real quick because now we're moving on to the point at which we'll probably talk about the Batman for nearly 3 months. So there you go.
Do you, do you think that there is a possibility, just depending on the ebbs and flows of the box office, that it might could take a sneak peek at number five once in a while?
Uh, I don't know. I think there's enough big stuff coming down the pipe where it's going to push it out.
Mm-hmm.
Because Spider-Man made $3.54 million or something like that. So I wouldn't be surprised if X drops hard enough next weekend. But at the same time, the movie we're going to talk about in a little bit is going to do strong enough to take its spot, or
Mm-hmm.
at least ascend above it. So that we're probably done with Spidey in the top five as far as I'm concerned, because there's just too much big enough stuff coming out in the next several weeks to keep it out. So
I'd be curious to see how that goes. And speaking of that, in terms of what we do have to come out next week, which is one I'm actually looking forward to, is The Lost City. The like we said, the Channing Tatum, Sandra Bullock, Brad Pitt, Daniel Radcliffe. Like
yeah, big
this is one
names.
big names. This is one of those ones where like they all do comedy and they actually all do comedy very well personally
Yep.
to the point, but it also feels like when they put the cast together for this movie that they just literally threw darts at a board of celebrities and be like, "Yep, that works." Like there's people in this like I could picture Sandra Bullock and Channing Tatum working together,
Hmm.
definitely like a Brad Pitt and Sandra Bullock,
Yep.
but like throwing Daniel Radcliffe and like there's just little parts about this I'm fascinated by just the casting and the overall premise of this movie, and I think this just looks stupid fun.
Yeah, I'm very excited for it too. I was actually kind of disappointed because I know Paramount did sneak previews with Fandango for this movie nationwide Saturday night this weekend, but we didn't get it, and so I was
Oh,
disappointed. Um, and then they're supposedly doing like a girls' night out preview showing on Tuesday and a date night out preview showing on Wednesday. So they're really trying to build up the word of mouth for this movie. It
hmm
also premiered at South by Southwest this past week. So again, they're really trying to manifest that see it with the crowd type stuff. And again, the cast is going to be great because again, it's the Channing Tatum comeback. I had to do some research. This is Sandra Bullock's first theatrical movie since Ocean's 8 4 years ago.
wow,
Because she's only done Netflix stuff like Bird Box and
true.
The Unforgivable since then. So that's her big movie there. Brad Pitt in a nice supporting role. And that's also kind of interesting because Brad Pitt's doing a favor for Sandra Bullock for this movie, but then Sandra Bullock's going to have like a cameo of sorts in Bullet Train in July. And you can actually
Ooh,
hear her voice in the trailer for that movie
that's
if you
right.
listen closely.
I did
And
remember
then
that she's in that.
Daniel Radcliffe, I know we had a offline conversation about like how he's been using his Harry Potter stardom for interesting things, and I always kind of enjoy it when he does like these villain or villainish type roles in blockbusters like
hmm
this, and Now You See Me Too, where he does magic but horribly for once. Um, so
That
yeah,
was one of the reasons why I wanted to see him in that though too. Is like it's magic, but it's not Harry Potter, and some people will give or take for that movie, whatever. I that's one of the reasons why I love that movie, to be honest. And it's a
yeah.
great cast.
Yeah. So I think this movie is going to do very huge. I think it actually has a very good shot of unseating the Batman at number one at this
hmm
point. So don't be surprised if that happens. At least I'm hoping that happens because something as funny and fun and star power driven as this kind of deserves to have a weekend at number one. So,
I would agree there. I do think it's going to have to fight for number one
yep.
because the Batman is definitely not going to just give up easily. But I did pull up Rotten Tomatoes here because it does look like there's nothing in regards to the embargo or anything like that. And right now, critic wise, it's 100%. And for audience, it's at 94, at least as of when, as I pull this up here. So, I mean, that to me, at least that's it's going in strong. Like, it doesn't have a whole lot of reviews yet. So, obviously, those numbers will change. But I still think that's a pretty good outing for where it's at.
Yeah, most of those reviews are coming from that South by Southwest
Yeah.
premiere. So again, I think seeing that in that packed house environment probably helped a lot. And then
Hmm.
obviously people in the public starting to see the movie last night, so they're able to put in those Fandango validated Rotten Tomatoes audience scores. So yeah, it's
Hmm.
going to do great. Can't wait to see it and can't wait to talk about it next
I
week.
know. I'm definitely looking forward to that. All right. So, excuse me, my coffee. All right. So that has been our box office for this week. Be sure to check us out every week as we like just to see how everything's playing out at the box office. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and Letterbox HQ, all at Backlot 605. If you want to hear us in regards to the movies we were talking about, be sure to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Google, Stitcher, Spotify, Amazon, and our pretty faces here on YouTube. Want to support the show and get more additional episodes, be sure to check us out over at patreon.com/backlot605. What else do we got going on there, Derek?
All right, this week on the Backlot 605 calendar, on the main feed on Wednesday, you guys will be talking about the OG Batman animated movie Mask of the Phantasm from '93 with the one and only Charlie Eccles currently on his beleaguered best friend tour. We'll see what twists and turns in that narrative show up on Wednesday's episode. So on the Patreon, yeah, you guys are going to be doing Batman and Robin. Because Batman Forever won the main feed poll. So it's going to get covered. Yeah, very interested to hear the 5 to 10 minutes of bat nipple talk alone that I'm sure will happen. So
Oh, we got Sam talking about this. There's probably easily going to be 10 to 15 minutes of bat nipple talk in cod
yeah,
pieces. So
yeah,
we're okay.
Yeah. And then, of course, come back to the website on Thursday for the Coming Soon article where we'll talk about the Lost City and other fun streaming stuff that's coming out this week. There you go.
Definitely. Awesome. Well, again, that's been the box office. We will check you out tomorrow when we talk about our bonus stuff here. So be sure to check that out. Even I don't even know what's going on yet. So be sure to check that out and see what Derek has got planned for us.
Yes.
Otherwise, we will see you tomorrow.
See you then.